My husband left me in the car at 6:47 in the morning while I was having contractions 6 minutes apart. He grabbed his fishing gear from the back seat and told me the hospital was only 12 minutes away and I could handle it. Then he got into his father's Chevy Silverado and I watched the red taillights disappear down Mulberry Street while another contraction ripped through my body. That was the morning I finally understood who I had married. My name is Destiny Dickerson. I was 29 years old, and I was about to give birth to my first child completely alone. I met Brent Holloway 4 years ago at a friend's backyard barbecue in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. He was charming, attentive, and had this way of making me feel like the only person in the room. We got married after a year of dating. I kept my last name Dickerson because my father had passed away 2 years before the wedding and I wanted to carry a piece of him with me. Brent said he understood, but looking back, I think that was the first red flag I ignored. He understood a lot of things he never actually accepted. Brent worked as the operations manager at his father's plumbing supply company, Holloway Pipe and Fixture. His father, Gerald Holloway, was 61, a widower who'd lost his wife to cancer when Brent was 15. I felt sorry for Gerald at first, but somewhere along the way, Gerald's grief turned into control. He kept Brent on an emotional leash so tight, the poor man couldn't breathe without checking if his father approved. Then there were the fishing trips. Every Saturday since Brent was 12 years old, he and Gerald went fishing together. They'd never missed one. Not for holidays, not for emergencies, not even for our wedding. We had to move the ceremony to Sunday because Gerald had already reserved their spot at Lake Raytown. I thought it was sweet at first, this father-son tradition. What I didn't realize was that I would never come before those fishing trips, not once, not even when I was literally bringing their family's next generation into the world. The signs were there before that March morning. A few months before my due date, I started noticing money missing from our joint checking account. Small amounts at first, 150 here, 200 there. When I asked Brent about it, he waved me off, saying they were business expenses. I work as a medical billing specialist at Keystone Orthopedic Associates. I understand numbers just fine, but I let it go because I was tired and pregnant and wanted to believe my husband wasn't lying to my face. My mother Colleen warned me about this marriage. 3 years ago, right before the wedding, she sat me down at her kitchen table in Scranton and said Brent seemed like a nice man, but a nice man who couldn't stand up to his father wasn't really a man at all. I told her she was being unfair. Mothers are annoying like that, always being right about things you don't want to hear. So there I was that Saturday morning in March, 9 months pregnant, contractions getting stronger, sitting in the passenger seat of our car because Brent was supposed to drive me to the hospital. Instead, he stood in our driveway with his fishing rod in one hand and his tackle box in the other, telling me his father was already at the lake and couldn't wait. He said women had been giving birth for thousands of years. He said I was strong. He said 12 minutes wasn't that far. Then he kissed my forehead and got in his father's truck. I sat there for a full minute after they drove away, not because I couldn't move. The contractions were painful but manageable at that point. I sat there because I genuinely could not believe what had just happened. My brain was trying to process the fact that my husband, the father of my child, had actually left me to drive myself to the hospital while in labor. I had 2 choices, fall apart or drive. I drove. The 12 minutes to Williamsport Hospital felt like 12 hours. By the time I pulled into the emergency lot, my contractions were 4 minutes apart and getting worse. I parked crooked across 2 spaces and didn't care. I called my sister Janelle from the parking lot, sobbing between contractions. Janelle is 36, works as a paralegal at a family law firm in Philadelphia, and has never liked Brent. She didn't ask questions. She just said she was getting in her car and she'd be there as fast as she could. Philadelphia to Williamsport is about 2.5 hours. She made it in 2. But first I had to check myself in alone. The humiliation of that experience is something I'll never forget. The intake nurse asked for my emergency contact and I wrote N.A. She asked where the baby's father was and I said he was unavailable. She and the other nurse exchanged a look. That look women give each other when they understand something without words. One of them, a kind woman in her 50s named Rita, squeezed my hand and said, "Honey, you're stronger than you know." I filled out my own insurance forms between contractions. I work in medical billing. I process insurance claims for a living. So there I was in active labor writing down authorization codes and policy numbers because I knew exactly which ones they'd need. If that isn't the most ridiculous irony of my life, I don't know what is. You know what the worst part was? Even then, even sitting in that hospital bed with monitors strapped to my belly and no husband in sight, I checked my phone. 17 texts to Brent, all marked as read. He had seen them, every single one. He just hadn't responded. He was too busy watching his fishing line. Rita came back to check on me and asked if there was anyone else she could call. I looked at my phone, at those 17 unanswered messages, and something inside me shifted. Not broke, shifted, like a door unlocking, like a part of me I'd kept quiet for 3 years finally waking up. No, I told her, there's no one else to call. But that wasn't entirely true. There was someone. There was me, and I was about to find out exactly how strong that someone could be. 11 hours. That's how long it took to bring my daughter into the world. 11 hours of contractions, breathing exercises, and nurses telling me I was doing great while I contemplated every life choice that had led me to this moment. Then around hour 6, everything stopped being beautiful. Lily May's heart rate dropped during a contraction. Not a little, a lot. Monitors started beeping. 3 nurses rushed into the room so fast I thought the floor might collapse. The doctor appeared out of nowhere, talking about fetal distress and emergency interventions and possible cesarean section. I was terrified, absolutely terrified. Not for me, for my baby. For this little person I hadn't even met yet but already loved more than anything. I grabbed my phone and texted Brent, baby in distress. Might need emergency surgery. Please come. 20 minutes later he responded, I'm sure the docs have it handled. Dad says the base are really biting today. Keep me posted. I read that text 3 times. I screenshot it. I didn't know why at the time. Instinct maybe. Some part of me already building a case I didn't know I'd need. The base are really biting. My daughter's heart rate was dropping. Doctors were preparing for emergency surgery. And my husband was worried about fish. I learned something about myself in that moment. I learned that I could feel heartbroken and furious at the exact same time. I also learned that I could push both of those feelings down and focus on what mattered, getting my baby out safely. Lily May stabilized, no surgery needed. And at 5:47 that evening, after 11 hours of labor, she came into the world screaming, 7 pounds 4 ounces. Perfect, absolutely perfect. I cried when they put her on my chest. Cried from relief, from joy, from exhaustion, from the strange loneliness of experiencing the most important moment of my life without my partner there to share it. I named her Lily May Dickerson, my last name, not his. Some decisions make themselves. Janelle arrived at 6:30, exactly 45 minutes after Lily was born. She burst through the door looking like she'd driven 100 miles an hour the whole way, which she probably had. She didn't say anything at first, just hugged me, then looked at Lily May, then hugged me again. When she finally spoke, all she said was, "Where is he?" I shook my head. She understood. She held my daughter while I finally let myself rest. And for the first time all day, the room felt like it had love in it. Brent showed up at 8:52 p.m. I know the exact time because I was watching the clock, wondering if he'd make it before midnight. He walked in sunburned and smiling, smelling like lake water, fish guts, and Coors Light. He didn't bring flowers. He brought a teddy bear from the gas station. I know it was from the gas station because the price tag was still attached, $7.99. I did the math later. That's approximately 68 cents per hour he was gone. My daughter's first gift from her father valued her at less than $1 an hour. "Sorry, babe," he said. "The fish were really biting and Dad needed help hauling in the cooler. But look, she's beautiful and you did great. I did great. Like I'd completed a school project or finished a 5K. Janelle had to leave the room. I heard her in the hallway, taking deep breaths, probably counting to 10 so she wouldn't come back in, and say something that would get her arrested. That night, while I was trying to figure out breastfeeding for the first time, Brent's phone rang. Gerald, not calling to congratulate us, calling to confirm next Saturday's fishing trip. Brent took the call right there in the hospital room, 10 feet from his newborn daughter, and I heard Gerald's voice through the speaker. Proud of you, son. Women are tough. She handled it. That's what they do. 3 weeks later, the hospital bill arrived, $23,847 after insurance. I went to check our joint savings account to set up a payment plan, expecting to find the $18,000 we'd carefully saved over the past 2 years. The balance was $3,200. Almost $15,000 gone. Vanished. When I asked Brent, he got defensive. His father needed a loan for the business. Inventory issues, cash flow problems. Gerald would pay it back. I asked to see the paperwork. What paperwork? Brent said. It's family. We don't need paperwork. No promissory note, no repayment timeline, no documentation of any kind. Just my husband giving away our savings to his father while I was pregnant, without telling me, without asking me, without even considering that it might be wrong. But the real kick in the teeth came 2 weeks later. I was doing laundry and I found a receipt crumpled in the pocket of Brent's fishing jacket. Lakeside Marine and Recreation in Huntington, $4,600 deposit on a fishing boat, dated 3 weeks before Lily was born. The exact same week Brent told me we couldn't afford to fix the broken heater in the nursery. We couldn't afford a $200 heater repair for our baby's room, but he had $4,600 for a boat deposit. I stood there in the laundry room holding that receipt, listening to Lily May cry in her nursery, the one with the broken heater, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, something quieter, something more dangerous. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I smoothed out the receipt, took a picture of it with my phone, and put it back in his pocket exactly where I found it. I didn't know what I was going to do with that information yet, but I knew I was going to do something, and I knew he wasn't going to see it coming. I went back to work at the end of May, about 10 weeks after Lily May was born. Maternity leave was technically 12 weeks, but I needed the money. More importantly, I needed access to a computer and printer without Brent looking over my shoulder, because I had a new project now. Figuring out exactly how badly my husband had screwed me over. Turns out I'm an excellent forensic accountant. Every lunch break, while my coworkers ate sandwiches and scrolled through social media, I sat in my car in the parking lot and went through our bank records. I'd requested 2 full years of statements from our joint account. What I found made my stomach drop. The pattern was clear once I laid it all out. Year 1 of our marriage, small amounts, 150 here, 200 there, 350 once. Year 2. The amounts grew. $500 in March, $800 in May, $1,200 in August. The last 6 months before Lily was born, everything accelerated. $2,000 in October, $3,500 in December, $4,100 in February. Large transfers, always to Holloway Pipe and Fixture LLC, always without my knowledge or consent. I added it all up 3 times because I couldn't believe the number. $67,340. $67,000 gone over 28 months from an account that had both our names on it. Money that was supposed to be for our future, our daughter's future, our life together. And he'd just given it away to his father without telling me, without asking, like I was an inconvenience to be managed rather than a partner to be consulted. I sat in my car and cried for about 5 minutes. Then I wiped my face, drank some cold coffee, and got back to work. Not my job work, my investigation work, because I wasn't done digging yet. The boat receipt had been bothering me. $4,600 was a lot for a deposit. I wanted to know what it was buying. So the following Saturday, while Brent was at the lake with his father, I drove to Lakeside Marine and Recreation in Huntington. I walked into the showroom and pretended to be interested in buying a boat. I casually mentioned that a friend had recently ordered something, last name Holloway maybe, and asked what model he'd gotten. The salesman lit up. He remembered that order. 2 minutes later, I was looking at the paperwork for a 2024 Tracker Pro Team. 195 TXW, fully loaded. Total price, $38,500. The $4,600 was just the deposit. There was a $33,900 loan on top of it. But here's the part that really got me. Registered owner, Brent Allen Holloway. Not Gerald, not the business Brent. Personally. My husband had bought himself a $38,000 fishing boat with money from our joint account and a loan co-signed by his father, and he'd never mentioned it to me once. I sat in the driver's seat and looked at Lily Mae in the rearview mirror. She smiled at me, that gummy, innocent smile that babies give when they have no idea what's happening around them. I smiled back. Then I called my sister. Janelle listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that changed the trajectory of my entire life. I know an attorney. Family law, specializes in hidden assets and financial fraud. Her name is Patricia Okonkwo. They call her the closer. She hasn't lost a contested divorce in 6 years. I wrote down the number, but I wasn't ready to call yet. First, I needed more information. Janelle helped me pull public records for Holloway Pipe and Fixture LLC. What we found was worse than I'd imagined. Brent wasn't just an employee at his father's company. He was listed as 50% owner, filed 18 months ago. He'd never told me, which meant that whatever debts the business had, whatever liabilities, whatever tax problems, Brent was personally responsible. For half of it, I also got access to our phone records. I'm the account holder on our family plan, so it was easy. Brent and Gerald talked 3 to 4 hours every single day. But it wasn't the call logs that gutted me. It was the text messages. Gerald referred to me as that woman in at least a dozen texts. 2 days before I gave birth, Gerald texted Brent, "Don't let her guilt you into skipping Saturday. She's playing you. Women always exaggerate these things." The day after Lily was born, Gerald wrote, "Proud of you for standing your ground, son. She needs to learn she's not your priority. Family is. As if I wasn't family. As if our daughter wasn't family." I read those texts in my car during my lunch break. I cried again, and then like before, I stopped, because crying wasn't going to fix anything. Crying wasn't going to protect my daughter. Crying wasn't going to get back the $67,000 my husband had stolen from our future. But preparation might. My mother moved in with us that week. Colleen Dickerson, 63 years old, retired school nurse, 5'4" and absolutely not someone you want to mess with. She said she was there to help with the baby. We both knew she was there because I'd told her what I'd found, and she wasn't about to let her daughter face this alone. She never said "I told you so." Not once. She just helped. On a Tuesday afternoon in late June, while Brent was at his father's shop planning their next fishing trip, I finally called Patricia Okonkwo. I told her everything. The hospital, the fishing trips, the money, the boat, the text messages, the business ownership, all of it. She listened without interrupting, asked a few clarifying questions, and then was silent. For a moment. When she spoke again, she said 5 words that changed everything. "You have an excellent case." Patricia Okonkwo's office was on the 3rd floor of a brick building in downtown Harrisburg, about an hour's drive from Williamsport. Patricia was 44 with close-cropped gray hair and reading glasses that she wore on a chain around her neck. She'd been a forensic accountant for 12 years before going to law school. She switched careers after her own bad divorce. She charged $350 an hour. I nearly choked when she told me, but then she said she offered payment plans for cases she believed in. And after reviewing my documentation, the bank statements, the boat receipt, the text messages, the business records, she believed in mine. The discovery phase of my divorce revealed things even I hadn't expected. Patricia subpoenaed the financial records for Holloway Pipe and Fixture LLC, and what came back was a disaster. The business owed $134,000 in back taxes, 3 years of what Patricia politely called creative accounting, what the IRS would call fraud. Multiple vendors were owed money. Suppliers had cut them off. The company was technically insolvent, surviving only on cash infusions from my joint checking account. Our savings had been keeping Gerald's failing business alive while I thought we were building a future together. As 50% owner of Holloway Pipe and Fixture, that ownership stake Brent had never bothered to mention to me. He was personally liable for half of everything. Half of the back taxes, half of the vendor debts, half of the entire financial catastrophe his father had created. Patricia pulled off her reading glasses and let them dangle on their chain. "Why, our husband," she said, "is in very serious trouble. And he doesn't even know it yet. The house was our biggest asset. We'd bought it for $285,000 3 years ago, right after we got married. The down payment was $35,000, a gift from my parents. I had the canceled check, I had the gift letter which specifically stated the money was intended for my down payment contribution. Patricia's eyes lit up when she saw those documents. In Pennsylvania, she explained, gifts to one spouse can be treated as separate property under certain circumstances. That down payment documentation changes everything. Patricia advised me to open a separate checking account in my name only. I started depositing my paychecks there instead of our joint account. Every 2 weeks, another $1,200 going somewhere Brent couldn't touch it. I also made copies of everything. Tax returns for the past 3 years, bank statements going back to the beginning of our marriage, the deed to our house, both car titles, every text message between Brent and Gerald that I could access. I kept the originals in their usual places and hid the copies in a box in my mother's closet in Scranton. And I started keeping a journal. Not a diary of my feelings, a log. Dates, times, and facts. Every time Brent chose fishing over his daughter, I wrote it down. May 3rd, Brent left at 5 a.m. for fishing. Lily Mae had a fever all night. Temperature reached 101.2. I handled it alone. He came home at 7 p.m., asked if she was feeling better, then went to bed. May 10th, asked Brent to skip fishing for Lily's baptism at St. Mark's. He said Gerald already reserved their spot at the lake. Baptism moved to Sunday. May 17th, Brent came home at 9 p.m. Lily Mae had been crying for 2 hours with colic. I asked where he'd been. He said I wouldn't understand. It's a father-son thing. He has a daughter. I understand plenty. You know what's surprisingly easy? Hiding things from someone who doesn't pay attention to you. I could have been planning a surprise party. I could have been learning to speak Mandarin. Instead, I was preparing to divorce him, and he noticed exactly as much as he noticed everything else about my life, which is to say nothing at all. He never asked why I was working late, never wondered why my mother had moved in, never questioned why I seemed distant. He was too busy thinking about his next fishing trip to notice his wife was planning her escape. Patricia and I decided on a filing strategy. In Pennsylvania, you can file for divorce at any time, but the timing matters. She suggested filing on a Friday afternoon, as close to the courthouse closing time as possible. That way, Brent couldn't file any counter-motions or emergency requests until Monday. It would give me the entire weekend to execute my plan. Friday, July 26th, Patricia filed at 4:47 p.m., 13 minutes before the courthouse closed. She filed for divorce on grounds of indignities, Pennsylvania's legal term for treatment that makes the marriage intolerable. She filed for full legal and physical custody of Lily Mae. She filed for child support based on our income differential. She filed for equitable distribution of assets, including reimbursement of the $35,000 down payment. She filed for her fair share of the fishing boat's value. Everything was in motion. Now came the hardest part, acting normal for one more night. Friday evening, I made dinner. Spaghetti with meat sauce, Brent's favorite. We ate together, watched some TV, went to bed early. He fell asleep by 10. I lay next to him, staring at the ceiling, running through my checklist. 2 suitcases packed and hidden in the garage. Lily Mae's car seat already installed in my car. Important documents already at my mother's house. Wedding ring ready to leave behind. At 5 a.m. Saturday morning, Brent's alarm went off. Fishing day. He kissed my forehead while I pretended to sleep. "I'll be back tonight," he whispered. "Have a good day." I kept my eyes closed until I heard Gerald's truck pull into the driveway, until I heard Brent loading his gear into the back, until I heard the engine start and the tires crunch on gravel as they drove away. Then I opened my eyes. It was time. Saturday, July 27th, 5:15 a.m. I moved fast but calm. I'd rehearsed this in my mind 100 times over the past month. Every step planned, every action deliberate. No panic, no second-guessing, just execution. 2 suitcases came out of the garage. I loaded them into my car, a 2018 Nissan Rogue that was in my name only. Lily Mae was still sleeping when I lifted her from her crib. She stirred a little, made that soft baby noise that always melted my heart, then settled against my shoulder. I strapped her into her car seat. She stayed asleep. Perfect baby. Always had been. Before I left, I went back inside one more time. I walked to our bedroom and placed my wedding ring on Brent's pillow, the ring he'd proposed with 4 years ago, back when I believed he was capable of putting someone else first. On the kitchen counter, I left the divorce papers, all 47 pages of them, and on top, a single yellow sticky note: "You can't catch a wife and release her. Read page 14. I thought it was clever fishing humor. I laughed when I wrote it. First time I'd laughed in months. By 5:45 a.m., I was on Route 81 North, heading toward Scranton, 70 miles to my mother's house, 70 miles to safety, 70 miles to the beginning of whatever came next. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the Pennsylvania hills in shades of orange and pink. Lily May slept in the back seat. The radio played softly, some old song from the 80s that I didn't recognize but found comforting anyway. I drove exactly the speed limit. No need to attract attention, no need to rush. Brent wouldn't be home for another 15 hours. By then, I'd be settled in my childhood bedroom, drinking tea with my mother, watching my daughter sleep in the portable crib we'd set up days ago. Brent got home at 8:23 p.m. Gerald's truck pulled into the driveway at 8:19, 4 minutes to unload his gear and walk inside. I can imagine what he found: dark house, empty rooms, silence where there should have been a baby crying or a wife asking about his day, the papers on the counter, the sticky note. I imagine him reading that note, confused at first, then flipping to page 14, where Patricia had itemized every single withdrawal from our joint account. $67,340, listed by date and amount. Page 15, the boat purchase with copies of the receipt and registration. Page 16, his 50% ownership of Holloway Pipe and Fixture and his personal liability for the company's $134,000 in tax debt. Page 17, my claim to the down payment and house equity. His hands must have been shaking by the time he finished. At 8:47 p.m., my phone screen lit up. Brent calling. I didn't answer. Straight to voicemail. By midnight, he'd called 47 times. I knew because I checked the log the next morning. 47 calls to a number I'd blocked at 6 a.m. that morning, right after I crossed the Scranton city limits. Sunday morning, Gerald drove to my mother's house. I watched from the upstairs window as his truck pulled up, as he marched to the front door, as he pounded on it with his fist. Colleen answered. My mother, 5'4", 63 years old, retired school nurse, stood in that doorway like a fortress. I couldn't hear what Gerald said, but I could imagine. Colleen's response was calm and clear. I heard every word through the open window. My daughter and granddaughter are resting. You can leave now or I can call the police. Your choice. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't need to. Gerald stood there for a long moment, probably trying to figure out how to bully a woman who clearly wasn't going to be bullied. Then he turned around and drove away. The next few months unfolded exactly as Patricia had predicted. Without my income covering the mortgage, the house payments fell behind immediately. Brent missed August, missed September. By October, the bank had sent foreclosure warnings. Meanwhile, Patricia's forensic accountant had torn through Holloway Pipe and Fixture's books and found clear evidence of tax fraud going back 3 years. As an officer of the court, Patricia was required to report suspected fraud to the appropriate authorities. She did so in late August. By October, the IRS had opened an investigation. By November, they'd frozen Gerald's business accounts pending a full audit. The dominoes were falling. September depositions. Under oath. On the record. Patricia deposed both Brent and Gerald separately. Brent's deposition was pathetic. He couldn't explain where the money had gone. He claimed he didn't know about the tax debt. He said his father had handled all the business finances. He threw Gerald under the bus at every opportunity, while somehow still defending him. But Gerald's deposition was the real show. Patricia asked him about the money transfers from our joint account. Gerald said he'd asked Brent for help. Brent offered. He didn't force anyone to do anything. Patricia asked if he knew the money belonged to both Brent and me. Gerald said Brent handles his own household. That's not my business. Then Patricia asked about his influence over Brent, about the daily phone calls, about the text calling me that woman, about the Saturday fishing trips that took priority over everything else in Brent's life. Gerald paused, looked at his lawyer, looked at Brent, who was sitting in the corner of the room watching his father testify. And then Gerald said the words that ended their relationship forever. "Brent's always been easily led. He's too weak to say no to anyone. That's his problem, not mine." I wasn't in the room, but Patricia told me about it later. She said Brent's face went pale, said he looked like someone had punched him in the stomach, said he finally saw his father for what he really was. But it was too late. 3 years too late for me. A lifetime too late for Brent. The divorce was finalized in November, 4 months after I filed. Patricia got me everything she'd promised: the down payment reimbursement, my share of the house equity, full legal and physical custody of Lily Mae, child support of $1,100 per month, automatically deducted from Brent's paycheck. Brent got supervised visitation 1 Saturday a month, supervised at a facility with social workers present, because the court reviewed his pattern of behavior, the documented absences, the prioritizing of leisure over parental responsibility, the financial deception, and determined he could not be trusted with unsupervised access to his own daughter. The fishing trips that were so sacred, so unmissable, so important that he'd left his wife in labor to attend them, those were exactly what cost him real time with Lily Mae. I need to tell you about the phone call, that first Saturday night, July 27th, 2 hours after Brent found the papers. His 48th call of the evening. Except this time, before I blocked his number, I let it go to voicemail just to hear what he'd say. He was crying, actually crying, sobbing. I'd never heard him cry before, not in 4 years together, not even at his grandfather's funeral. "Please, Destiny, please come home. I was wrong about everything. I'll change. I swear I'll change. I'll skip fishing. I'll be a real husband, a real father. Please, just give me another chance. I can't do this without you." I listened to that voicemail once, then I deleted it. I thought about responding for about 3 seconds. Then I remembered the text message he'd sent while our daughter's heart rate was dropping. "Dad says the bass are really biting today. Keep me posted." I blocked his number. I never answered again. The house sold in January foreclosure auction. It went for less than market value, $262,000. But after the mortgage was paid off and Patricia extracted my settlement, I walked away with $78,000. That included my $35,000 down payment, my share of the remaining equity, and a few additional adjustments the court approved based on Brent's documented financial deception. The boat. Brent had been making loan payments for about a year, so the balance was down to around $19,000. When he couldn't keep up with payments after the divorce, the court ordered it sold. Went at auction for $31,000. After the loan payoff, about $12,000 remained. I got my half, $6,000. Not much, but it felt like justice. That boat he bought instead of fixing our daughter's nursery heater ended up paying for her new crib. Child support started flowing in December. $1,100 a month automatically deducted from Brent's paycheck before he even sees it. He can't hide from it, can't forget to pay, can't claim he doesn't have the money. It just happens like clockwork. Every 2 weeks, $550 deposited into my account. The most reliable Brent has ever been about anything. I moved to Scranton permanently in January. Found a 3-bedroom townhouse about 15 minutes from my mother. Used $15,000 of my settlement for the security deposit, furniture, and an emergency fund. Invested $40,000 in index funds for long-term security, something my grandmother always preached about. I call the remaining savings my never depend on anyone again account. In March, I got promoted. Senior billing specialist at a larger medical practice in Scranton, working for a woman named Claudia, who raised 3 kids as a single mom. She gets it. The salary is $58,000 a year plus benefits. Not rich, but comfortable, stable. Mine? Lily Mae is 18 months old now. She's walking, talking, well, babbling mostly, but I swear she said mama last week, and my heart nearly exploded. She has my eyes and unfortunately Brent's nose, but that's the only thing of his she's getting. Everything else, the values, the strength, the understanding that she deserves to be someone's priority, that's coming from me and my mother and my sister. The women who showed up, the women who stayed. As for Brent, he lost the house. He lost the boat. He lost unsupervised access to his daughter. He lost any respect I ever had for him. After the foreclosure, he moved into a rented room above his father's shop, the shop Gerald no longer owns. The IRS investigation concluded in February. Gerald had to sell Holloway pipe and fixture to cover the back taxes, the penalties, and the interest. He works for the new owners now as a regular employee, takes orders from a 32-year-old named Kyle who calls him Jerry, and makes him clean the warehouse on Fridays. Brent's supervised visitation with Lily Mae is scheduled for one Saturday a month. In the 6 months since the divorce was finalized, he's shown up for exactly 2 of them. The other 4 times he canceled. Always has an excuse: car trouble, work emergency, not feeling well. Same pattern, different context. And those sacred Saturday fishing trips, the ones that couldn't be missed for anything, not for a wedding, not for a funeral, not for the birth of a child. Gerald told Brent he's too busy now. Has to work weekends at the warehouse because Kyle needs him there. Funny how that works. Funny how the thing Brent sacrificed his marriage for has disappeared completely. Funny how Gerald's priorities shifted the moment they became inconvenient for Gerald. I'd feel sorry for Brent if I had any sympathy left, but I used it all up on that drive to the hospital, breathing through contractions, wondering why I wasn't worth 12 minutes of delay on a fishing trip. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was at the Wegmans on Route 6 doing my weekly grocery shopping. Lily Mae was in the cart chewing on a teething ring and charming everyone who walked by. We just grabbed some bananas when I turned the corner into the cereal aisle. Brent was standing there. He looked older, tired, thinner, like life had been chewing on him. He was holding a box of generic cornflakes, the store brand, and staring at the price like it personally offended him. He saw me at the same moment I saw him. His face went through about 6 emotions in 3 seconds. Surprise, shame, hope, desperation, regret. Something that might have been love once but had curdled into something else. Destiny, he said. His voice cracked. I want to say, I waited, not because I wanted to hear it, but because I'd earned the right to watch him struggle. I'm sorry, he finally managed. I was wrong about everything. My dad, the money, the fishing, leaving you at the hospital, all of it. I was so stupid. I see that now. I didn't know. I didn't understand what I was throwing away. I looked at him for a long moment. This man I'd married. This man I'd believed in. This man who'd chosen a fishing trip over the birth of his daughter, who'd stolen $67,000 from our future, who'd let his father call me that woman without ever defending me once. I thought about all the things I could say, all the anger I could unleash, all the years of frustration and disappointment and betrayal that I could pour out right there in the cereal aisle of a Scranton Wegmans. But here's the thing I've learned about revenge. The best revenge isn't making someone suffer. It's moving on so completely that their suffering becomes irrelevant to you. So I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing that he still had any power over my emotions. I just looked at him, smiled slightly, and said, I hope you catch something worth keeping someday, Brent. Then I pushed my cart past him, grabbed a box of Cheerios for Lily Mae, and kept walking. I paid for my groceries, loaded them into my car, drove home to my townhouse where my mother was making dinner and my daughter's toys were scattered across the living room floor, and my life was messy and imperfect and entirely my own. I didn't look back. There's nothing behind me that I need. Some people show you who they are in small moments. Every Saturday morning for 3 years, Brent showed me exactly who he was. He showed me that his father would always come first, that tradition mattered more than commitment, that I was an afterthought in my own marriage. But he made it undeniable on one Saturday morning in March, when he chose a fishing trip over watching his daughter come into the world. When he left me in that car with contractions 6 minutes apart and told me I could handle it. He was right about one thing, though. I could handle it. I handled the hospital. I handled the labor. I handled the delivery. I handled discovering his lies, documenting his betrayal, hiring an attorney, filing for divorce, and rebuilding my entire life from the ground up. The woman who drove herself to the hospital while in labor can do anything. And that's the thing about being underestimated. When someone assumes you're weak, they never see you coming. They never prepare for you to fight back. They're too busy looking at the lake to notice the storm rolling in. So here's what I've learned, and maybe it's useful to someone out there listening to this story. When someone shows you they'll never put you first, believe them. Don't make excuses. Don't hope they'll change. Don't convince yourself that love is enough. Believe them the first time, the 10th time, the 100th time, and then make the only decision that really matters. Put yourself first, because nobody else is going to do it for you.